going, folks? Welcome to the Riffin with Jeza podcast. It's middle of the day here in urban Kuala Lumpur jungle. I just had a couple of thoughts come to mind, so I don't have my selfie stick, but we'll give it a crack now. This is one of the interesting things about when you... So I was talking about on the last podcast about how on paper it was barely sort of useful doing this podcast, as you know, most podcasts I definitely have nowhere near even double figure views, so it's quite incredible. I think YouTube has changed over time, so you know, it was probably a great business model in the beginning, but now it's probably almost very, very difficult. You know, just sort of for the average person to make money without paying for advertising, which is no fucking way I'm doing that. Doesn't even pay that well, even if you do get well known. Anyway, long story short, I just started to get some ideas come to my mind, so I just thought I'd share it, and I'll just do this walking talk podcast just through my earbuds. So it's quite interesting. I was talking yesterday about how, well, a couple of days ago I was talking about how, you know, we get urges, we get a spiritual calling, and our mind comes in and weighs up end results, you know, so cost benefit analysis, is this worth it? And it's quite interesting. So I've had this sort of dialogue in my head now for a couple of years at least, and I've been doing this podcast on and off for a year or two, but I think I got the vibe to do this way before then anyway. Look, it's hard to know exactly what's right or not, but usually once you start on something, then you get shown what's right or what's not right. But either way, so I talked about the other day about how you get, you know, got this vibe to do this podcast, but another part of me just thought, this is such a waste of time, you know, because, well, a few reasons, but one of the obvious reasons was that, you know, it's like there's just zero views. There's almost zero, like there's at the moment 1 or 2. And as I said, that could be completely a YouTube thing. But either way, if people can't even get to it, you know, they can't even hear it, you know, so that's not a great sort of situation. Anyway, not a big deal either way. But anyway, so I was basically talking about how I'd had this feeling to do it, and it's quite interesting. One of the things I said, and as I said, some of this stuff was just occurring to me as I was speaking. But one of the things I said is that when you don't listen to your spiritual nudges, it actually creates turbulence in your mind. Because if I have a spiritual nudge to do something, then what happens is, you know, my mind has to come in and justify why I'm not following that spiritual nudge. You know, my mind has to come in and justify it. And so what that does is, by not following a spiritual nudge, not only do you not see the outcome of the spiritual nudge, which you can never see in full, there's just no way. Like, if you fell in love with someone, do you really think you'd see the end result? You know, the good and the bad? No way. And if you did, you may not even do it, because you might just play defensive, you know. So, but either way, you would never do it, you know, and that's part of life. Like we're here to experience and not, it's not about perfect results. It's not about perfect processes or results. It's about experiencing something, you know, and learning something, you know, and other things, you know, just, probably just experiencing something. Anyway, so one of the things I realised is that, like, sort of, it's really humid here, I'm a bit stuffed, and I had lunch just before. You know, one of the things I realised is that by not following that nudges, it sort of takes you into your head, and your head chatter gets busy. And I remember that day that I did it, my head chatter felt quiet. And it's quite interesting because it felt quiet in spite of the fact that I'd smashed down a decent amount of alcohol that day, which is definitely not something that's overly aligned. Well, not really at all. But it's not, you know, that wouldn't be my spirit calling. But in spite of that, my mind went quiet. And I thought, well, I felt, hey, I'm on track. Isn't that funny? So just by doing it, and I had a look online, there's two views. One of those could be me. So, but either way, there's two views. But it just felt, yeah, this is right, what I'm doing. This is where I'm meant to be. Really interesting. So, you know, and who knows why that is. You know, in the end, it doesn't even really matter. The reason it doesn't matter is because you can come up with any story, good or bad, and if it's not the truth, the feeling will keep haunting you. It'll just keep nagging at you. So regardless of whether I thought on the material world that was useful or not useful, or successful or not successful around the metrics that I decide in that moment, doesn't actually matter. If my spirit said to do it, that's actually what matters, and that's actually what brought the peace. Really quite interesting. So one of the things I think people don't realise is that at the end of the day, like what I'm doing here, like in the material world right now, barely matters at all. Like it is so insignificant, it's unbelievable. You know, it is so, like those two views just could be a misclick. I mean, that could be anything. As I said, one of them could be me or whatever. But it's just, it's so insignificant in terms of like, there is almost nobody watching this or listening at the moment. Right now, you know, December 2025. So, could be in the future, but right now is almost nothing. But the point is that if you turn away from that spiritual guidance, the first thing is you just get turbulence in the mind. If you turn towards it, the first thing you get is peace. And if you have peace, apart from just you'll feel so much better, massively, and you'll feel on path, you'll feel this is right, like you just don't know where that will end. Because when you feel peace, it's quite interesting. Like it's like that leads to other stuff. That builds on itself, you know. So when as I said, I was just walking through, sweating my ass off the jungle at the moment, and just, you know, stuff started coming to my mind. So I thought, okay, let's do it now, you know. And as I said, at the level of end results and physicality, who knows if this will even be heard, but it's just, I hear it, you know. And if I hear it, that leads on to other things, you know, in other parts of my life. Quite interesting. And for whatever reason, for whatever reason, you know. Sometimes it perplexes me, but for whatever reason, I just notice when I do this stuff, I download, like I start channeling. And I often think to myself, I wonder why the universe or the creator or whatever, I wonder why it's passing this through me, you know, because I think to myself, nobody's listened to it, and yet there's something coming through that's not me. Isn't that interesting? But here's the thing. Like, let's say that I was doing this and I had 10,000 listeners. I just know that I would start feeling self-conscious, and I'd start probably trying to get it perfect, or, you know, I'd start thinking about what I'm saying. Whereas at the moment, there's nobody listening, and so it's literally, I can say this stuff completely freely, you know. The similar thing happens with my music. Like, a lot of the time some beautiful melodies come through, and I'm quite shocked how beautiful it is. But if I actually knew I had an audience, maybe I'd get in the way, because I'd probably suddenly become pretty precious, you know, and pretty self-involved, when that's not really how it works. It doesn't, you know, the more you're self-involved, the more you kind of block the magic. You know, like, I could sit there and, okay, if I knew I had 10,000 views, I definitely would probably, you know, clean it up a bit more, you know, like make it, polish the mistakes. But that actually, that might improve it 3 or 4%, but it's definitely not going to like tap into the magic. So, you know, like, I normally find that polishing, you know, you might get a few percent. How's it going? Oh, really? Oh, bites people? Really? Why? Like it bites?
Yes.
Wow. Classic. There's a lot of monkeys here. Some of them are a little bit aggressive. Yeah, so like if there was actually an audience, then that actually might be an impediment. Now, to some people, it may not be. But that doesn't actually matter, because for me, it could be. You know, and I think attachment is what creates the impediment. You know, so in a way, kind of not giving a shit. Like, if you're completely giving it to give, you tend not to be attached. And that's part of it. But also, like, you know, it not mattering, you know. But not mattering is something that you can't really force it. You know, like, and again, I'll bring up a relationship example. Like, when you really like someone, telling yourself it doesn't matter almost never works. All you can really do is just, okay, I'm triggered, I'm giving away my power, putting this person on a pedestal, but it is what it is. So let's just allow it to pass. And, you know, eventually eventually the energy of that dilutes, because it doesn't, you know, once you experience something, the sort of conserved energy releases, and then it's not as big a deal. So anyway, I mean, that's something about, quote unquote, not being successful or not having an audience. That if something is really in your heart, or if you feel guided to something, you know, then like it basically, it allows you to be a freer channel. So as I say, like some people, you know, not everybody has the same level of self-consciousness, or this affects everybody differently. But that could be a case with me. Like it could be that I need to get out all this material first before people can hear it. Who knows? Or it could just relate to my personal level. Anyway, so I'll, boy, it's hot. So I'm going to leave it here. But this is sort of, this episode today, I guess, maybe you could title it as, do you want peace or do you want procrastination? You know, so, because the emotional motivation for procrastination is peace, but in the end, people probably don't even notice that their mind will spend the next however long justifying it. And the more deep in someone that is, the more connected someone's soul, the more the pull and the push and the intrinsic spiritual direction will be stronger. And so the more they will have to push back against it. And for me, as I said, like I don't really even care that much about the end result. Like I do a little bit, but the bigger point for me is not that, it's actually just I'm doing it because I just simply feel guided to do it. And it's almost like I want to get the universe off my back. It's just like, you happy now? For fuck's sake, are you happy now? Like I'm doing it. Leave me fucking alone, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, just when you feel guided to something, however you think about that, you know, that can, everybody has a spiritual sense. Well, 99% of people do. Unless you're really cut off or a psychopath. Majority of people have a spiritual sense. And it's really just a case of like, do you listen to it? You know? And everybody's is unique. And this is definitely something, a calling of mine. And part of why you know it's a calling is because you don't really want to do it. I mean, I kind of do, but another part of me thinks, fuck this. You know? Like I write ambient music and healing music. I don't have to be involved in any way personally. How's it going? And that's kind of, yeah, that's definitely a greater comfort, greater comfort zone. But anyway, here we are. So I'll end it there. Do you want procrastination or peace? Just some thoughts to ponder. You don't have to believe anything. If something connects that's helpful, then you can use it. Have a cracker. Riffin with Jeza.